Welcome to the Unwired webinar. I know we have people from across the globe today, so would like to welcome you with a very good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Today's topic is your data AI ready and how to unlock AI insights from enterprise data. My name is Alok Pant. I'm CEO of Unwired based in Houston. And what we decided today is to take a very practical approach. So we will actually start off right off the bat with a demo. We'll demo to you two data agents, one for the semantic model, more for if you live in the Power BI DAX world, and one will be a data warehouse agent, more in the SQL text to SQL world. And because one of the key objectives of the webinar is that after this is over, you can actually go and start thinking about how do you develop your own AI agent and data agents and deploy them in your own enterprise. So that's the goal. So with that in mind, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so a few housekeeping notes. We will share the recording of this webinar with everyone. There will be a live Q&A at the end. And in the meanwhile, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. And we are very happy to announce two complimentary offers for all attendees. One is a 2 hours free advisory session. So if you want us to come and review your existing data platform, maybe you're already using Fabric, or your existing, or your architecture or data strategy, anything around data and AI, happy to share our ideas with you. And also we are offering discounted pricing to help build your first data agent, or perhaps you already have built a data agent, you want to enhance it, you want to make it more trustworthy. We're happy to work with you on that. So next slide, please. All right, our main speaker today is Chad Nguyen. Chad has been working in the data field for over 20 years and has now focused on how to bring or leverage AI in BI. He will do the demo and discuss what's broke today in the AI in BI world and how do we fix it. So next slide, please. Here is a quick look at the agenda. So, we will talk about how people today want to move from dashboards to having a conversation with your data, right? And then we'll dive into the demo as promised. We want to show you stuff in action. And then we will talk about what is lacking today that prevents AI from being, very effective in BI. We'll talk about what you need to do, adding metadata, building the governance, and having the right architecture so that you can have deterministic AI in BI. You can build data agents that bring the right data, don't hallucinate, so you can confidently get the same result today and tomorrow. The results don't differ. So that's the kind of things that we want to talk so that you can set the right data foundation. We'll also discuss a customer case study where the customer had an existing data platform, in this case Fabric, Microsoft Fabric, and how we help them improve upon the data platform and make it data AI ready. And then most importantly, we will discuss how do you go and get started in deploying, in developing your first data agents or improving your data agents. And then we'll have a Q&A. Next slide, please. So before we dive into the meat of the discussion today, let me share an overview of Unwired so that you have the context. So we are a Houston headquartered company that is a hybrid software/IT services firm. We are a certified SAP partner. We are also partners with Google, Microsoft, and Claude. And our solutions fall in 4 main pillars. So we are doing a lot of data modernization projects. We are building AI agents. We do a lot of custom app dev, mobile and web apps. Then we have a suite of applications for the connected worker, which is asset management, inventory management, safety, digital forms. So with that, let's dive into what we really want to talk about today. Next slide, please. With that, I'm going to hand over to Chad. How do we go, Chad, from dashboards to conversations? Let's do the demo, and then you can share your ideas about how people on the webinar can actually make this work for them. So over to you.
Okay, all right. Let me, good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay, everyone should see my screen, right? And if you've used like AI, Claude is one of the best known AI tool out there. So what you're looking at is the interface that I have. And I'm going to start asking questions about the data that I have behind the scene. Okay, so I'm going to ask, right now, say, hey, give me sales for 2026. Okay, So I'm showing you right now is I'm gonna explain. Right now, the AI is using an MCP server called Text Supply Fabric Agent, okay, to get the data, right? So I'm able to connect it, and after this, I'm going to show you within Microsoft Fabric how I configure this whole thing. Okay, you see the data right here, and then from here you can start, having a questions. Okay, so far so good. Is it simple? I hope everyone is kind of familiar with AI concept and the concept of MCP server. So think of MCP server as the human-friendly API to get to your information. And right now, the AI agent is using the MCP server for Fabric data. Okay, so now I'm going to go and switch back into Microsoft Fabric to show you the underlying data. Okay, so let me pull my screen over here. Okay, so this is my environment, my Microsoft Fabric environment. And then you can see, from the agent over here, you see two agents that I set up. Okay, this is one agent, and I call this one Semantic Model Agent. Okay, and then I have another one called the Data Warehouse Agent, and I'm going to explain the difference between the two. Okay, so this is how I set up the agent, and let me show now how do the agent get exposed from Microsoft Fabric, okay, to the demo that you saw earlier. So if I come out here, go back, and I will look at the setting. You see this MCP server URL? That is the connection that I need for my agent over here to talk with Microsoft Fabric. Okay, that is as easy as it gets, right? So before the agent can answer the questions that I asked earlier, what do I have to do in the background? And here I have the agents. Let me make it bigger. And you will notice I have two agents. One agent has data in the semantic model, and then the other agent has the data in the data warehouse. Okay, and let's look at the one in the data warehouse. Okay, I have a simple database. So I have the agent instruction. It has a system prompt. Okay, it tells me about the company. And then if I scroll down a little bit more, it has a section to explain the data sources that I need. And it has all these SQL view that I use to answer those questions. Okay. And then a little bit further down, okay, I have all the formatting rules. Okay. And I have some definitions for this agent when you ask questions about revenue and different channel. Okay. And then down here, I have some guardrails in terms of do not do this, do not do this. So these are the instructions behind the agent that I can set up within the Microsoft Fabric environment. So now I can make my agent more relevant and smarter. Okay. So the question people would know, like, well, Chad, what happened if I don't have all this information? Why can't I just put the data out there and let the AI go to town with it? So if you do something like that, the AI, it will find you the answer. It will, likely hallucinate, because no matter what, it will get you the answer. And you know how data is, right? Let's say, even, sales, for example, you might have multiple table for sales. You've got maybe sales per product, sales per person, sitting in a different aggregated table, and then you have a sales fact table where you have all the detail. Now, with all that information, if you do not give the AI the proper instruction, it will pull in some data that might not be 100% correct, or will give you different answer, a different answer every time, right? Or different person. So that is the the agents behind that using the warehouse. So that's what I just showed you, okay? So I have the agent instruction, and then let me see this. And I also have a section called example queries, right? That I can put right in here within Microsoft Fabric with questions, and then the SQL statement that it should use to answer these questions. So Microsoft has done a great job of having the space for you to set up like this, right? Very well organized. Then this is the agent using the data warehouse. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is the agent that using semantic model. And for many of you who are familiar with Microsoft Power BI, right? And using Power BI, the concept of semantic model should be familiar to you, okay? And within semantic model, you have something called DAX, which is a data expression language, that's more business friendly and a lot more powerful than your typical SQL. And the other thing about semantic model is you can a lot of instruction. And why don't I pull up the semantic model and show you what that looks like, okay? See here. I'm going to open it up. Okay, within a semantic model, you see a number of tables. And then within those tables, you would see, you see the tables. And within the table, I have the description of that table in detailed business term to describe what that tables mean. And for each individual columns, I also have a description of each column, okay? And each of the measures, for many of you who are familiar with DAX, right? The DAX can be very, quite complex. I have something here, it's simple. But again, I have a bunch of DAX measure in here. Guess what? Every single measure has a description right in here. When the AI answer your questions, it will go through all of this to make sure it gets the right thing to you in a consistent manner, okay? So that is the semantic model. And the fact that you can augment semantic model with business-friendly and business-relevant information, it will get used by the AI. Okay, now let me go back to, now let's talk about the Fabric agent that uses semantic model behind the scene. Okay, so you see all these table facts and dim, okay? And again, I have a whole bunch of instructions. Data model, predefined measure. So when you ask a question, what measure it should use, okay? And then underneath, further down, I have a whole lot of measure with a whole lot of instruction. I have some business rule, similar to the other one. And then I also have some sample questions for us to use, okay? And these are the pure DAX, right? So really the DAX formula that it used. Now let me show you the report, right? I have just a simple report that I put together. Now, if your agent is using the semantic model, it is smart enough to know all your reports that hook up to that semantic model and how you use that report by your user and how you drill down into your chart on how you always commonly use certain measure all the time. It will keep track of all of that. So the semantic model agent can get smarter and smarter over time, the more the user using your reports. Okay, so not only you can add all those prompts, but your usage is also get incorporated into your agent. All right. So that is the behind the scene of how I'm able to connect from the AI agent on the front end. And you will notice that I use Claude, but I could easily use Copilot. I could easily use Gemini. or open AI. I guess the secret sauce is the MCP server because that is the common language that all the AI actually use for communication, right? So the fact that Microsoft exposed MCP server endpoint, the data agent can get to it and start answering questions. All right. So any questions from the audience? All right. I hope everyone find that useful. Now we can go back to the presentation. I can talk to it.
So, Chad, I guess before you go there, just to set
Yep.
maybe things in context. So, what we saw was an AI agent. This was powered by Claude, the front end, having the conversation with the data, and you showed all the work that needs to be done. So I think there's a common misconception that you can just point Claude to your data and get answers. I guess you could do that, but the risk is wrong data, hallucinations, and so the I guess the idea is for the next part of the webinar is to basically show people the things they need to do to get the data AI ready, right? So they can have that conversation in a trusted manner, right? So I guess that's where we are going.
Yes,
Correct.
that's
So
where we're
take
going.
it from here then. All right.
Yep. We can go to okay. If we can go to the next slide. Yep. So why most AI analytics struggle? I think the misconception is, hey, just point an LM at the warehouse, right, and to the underlying data and let it answer questions. I think the key distinction here is this. When you go into an AI agent and are chatting, it uses a LLM, which is a model, okay, large language model. And the way it come up to your answer is using language and using the similarity of the terminology and like the word that you use and how similar they are. And it will guess to bring and kind of best guesstimate to answer your question based on the language that you use. Now, for a tabular data like this, like databases, it does not use the LLM so much. It will use something for a warehouse. It will use like a model called natural language to SQL. So whatever when you ask the questions behind the scene, the AI will take that and turn that into a SQL statement and then run that SQL statement with your database. That's one. Now, Microsoft has something even better. So they have something called a DAX generator behind the scene. So when I connect it to a semantic model, the DAX generator behind the scene will generate all the DAXs that's needed to start answering questions. So that's just one step, right? The other step was what I showed earlier, where we have to put all the metadata behind those models to really, make it more deterministic, right? So the other thing is, data staleness. Let's say if your data is old, it would lead to hallucination. Now, the way Microsoft or Fabric do all of this is, you can integrate whatever you build, the agent that you build, it would connect to a repository where you can maintain version control as if you do coding, as you do a software development type of project. So all the documents, all the metadata that I put there, as it changes, as you make changes, it will go through the CI/CD process and get updated as you go. So it's not like you build it once and just let it sit there and then somebody have to manually maintain all of that. So version control is integrated within the Microsoft Fabric environment as you build your data agent, okay? Another point here is the lack of metadata. I mean, I've been guilty of this for years because we come from IT background, right? And we start to build things. We build a database, we get it working, we show the data. Yep, it's working. And and oftentimes many of us would not going back to the business or spend enough time with the business to ask them, hey, what does this one column really mean to you? When you see somebody saying a GL, another person call account, another one's called control, in different contexts, it has a different meaning. And a lot of time, we IT people, we forget to do some of that, right? And even before, it takes a lot of time and effort to make it happen because it's so hard enough just to do the ETL to get it to the place where it can give you an answer, right? Let alone getting more business involved to ask every single table what it means. What's this column, what it mean? In what context would this whole mean? Now with AI, all of this is all possible. And metadata is the bridge to that, right? Lack of metadata mean no bridge between data and meaning. So, okay. Next slide, Sushil. Okay. And here I say, with my experience, like I see the three tensions with every organization in space, right? Agility versus governance. We want to move fast, all right? But we don't want to lose that trust. Now, with a lot of the tools out there, I think we can get through both agility and governance. Now, like now we can shrink time and develop something, faster. The governance will take, I think it will take the same amount of time, but now because the fact that we can build things faster, we could have more time to actually engage with the business and asking for context. Okay, access versus expertise. Data teams are the bottleneck, not because they're slow, but because translating business questions into SQL requires a specialist, and it's difficult. I understand it's difficult. So now with AI, it can help with that, right? Investment versus adoption. Now, 70 to 80% of analytical work still happens in spreadsheets because platform requires too much training to use. Imagine with the right metadata in place, getting input from the business, put it in. I think we can solve this problem. Okay. Next slide. Why previous solution fell short? The self-service BI, great for exploration, but users still need to know what to look for. Okay. Like data catalog, yeah, we can see the data, you can access it, but now you have to know how to use SQL to get to that answer. And then now you see chatbots on data. And when chatbot came out, people ask all kind of questions. It's great, but once you put into that ask questions about data, this is where things kind of fall apart because of hallucination. And the fact that we have metadata and enhance the semantic model, we can solve this problem, right? The missing ingredient wasn't more data or better dashboard. It was trusted conversational interface to govern data, okay? One that a CFO could use the same way a data engineer does, giving you the right answer every single time. Next slide. Yeah, I want to, metadata is the governance layer. The most important things is invisible to the end user. It's the metadata that changes everything. That's the secret sauce. All right. If you go away with this whole meeting and forget everything, just remember this. That metadata is the most important thing, right? To link between your technical data model to the actual business users. Okay. And in the example that I show you guys, you see the semantic model agent and you see the data warehouse agent. And why did I do that? For many of us that's not familiar with Microsoft technology with Power BI semantic model, data warehouse is something that many of us are familiar with, right? With table, with joins, and writing SQL statement and stuff like that. I mean, like probably 80% of the world still doing that. It's been around for years and years. A data warehouse without a semantic model, you can add system prompt in there to make it smarter, the best you can. Now, for some of you who are familiar with semantic models, there's a lot more hooks where you can add, you can enhance with information as I showed earlier, go to every table, every column, and adding, context, adding description, right? in order for you to get to your answer. And with Microsoft, like I said earlier, with Microsoft, Power BI reports, with the semantic model agent, it can also tap into the report itself, actually understanding, the graphs, right? And guess what? Behind those graphs are just like basic JSON. Every graph that you see, that beautiful report, it's nothing magical graphic. It's all JSON behind the scene. That's the reason why the AI can understand everything, right? Metadata is the governance layer, okay? And we show you two agents with two purposes, right? Explainability closes to the loop. Every answer shipped with the SQL or DAX behind it. Okay, we want to stress that, right? Metadata is not documentation. It is the mechanism by which governance policies become AI behavior. Next slide. Right. I think, it's similar to what the previous slide had said, right? I'm just going to go straight to. So, in the schema, you add explicit description to fields, column, views, and keys. You can map the relationship, everything, okay? Clarify system shorthand, prevent identity failure or context breakdown. In the second step, like automated scaling, AI auto generation, extract metadata and query logs from warehouse and BI system, cluster asset by semantic usage pattern and business context. So guess what? As you use your agent, there's a lot of metadata behind the scene. Let's say, how long does it take for me to build out all these metadata agent that we require to do? There are tools, right? You can put an AI agent on system documentation or business documentation and let it make the first attempt, right? In the first attempt, it can go through every table and every column, and it will, give you like a 70, 80% type of answer. And I mean, that gives you quite a bit of automation already into an Excel file or something like that. And then the next step, which we have the human to review, right? There's some special knowledge that certain analysts that use that, he doesn't share with everybody, or he would share that with people in the meeting, but then it's not baked into the system. Now, with a human governance loop, we can start catching all these, these knowledge, these nuances that the business user has garnished, over the years, understanding the business, understanding all the driver, and they can, and once we get that and we document it in a piece of paper, in Excel file, we can use tool, and within a Microsoft framework, you can use tool and upload, mass upload of description and context to every table, every columns, and with the system and system instruction, right? So version control changes prevent accuracy regression in production, right? So test-driven semantic modeling is what we want to get to.
So, Chad, I guess before we move on, if I'm in the audience, it's probably we are thinking about how hard it is to build the metadata, right? Because it seems very tedious. I have millions of fields and tables and views. So I guess you mentioned that you can use AI, and we were earlier discussing how you could extract the schema, feed it to Claude or OpenAI or wherever, and have that metadata generated 80%. And then what is interesting is the human doesn't go away, right? The human still, very much in the AI and BI, there is a role for humans to validate the data and bring the enhance it with the right business context. So I think those are the two takeaways from me. That one, metadata is key. You can use AI to build the metadata, but then you need the humans, the data experts, business experts, to validate that yes, this is the right metadata, right? Okay.
Yep.
And I think that's where customers may need some help. Yeah. All right.
And,
next slide, I guess.
Yeah. Next slide. I mean, feel free to ask questions as I go through. We don't have to wait until the end.
Yeah, I think we have a 30-minute mark. So
yeah. Okay. So beyond metadata, give detailed prompt instruction to agent, right? And I mean, you saw some of that, with the system instruction, and those are stuff that we could add in. Treat skill maintenance very importantly. Skill docs describe a data model that changes daily, hopefully not daily. Without active maintenance, they are wrong, within weeks. So let's say as your business changes, or as you add new process, you have a place and you want AI to, quickly capture that data. So the next time the user will go in and ask the agent, it gets the latest update. And
especially for those of us who live in the Claude world, you will be familiar with the term. Claude, has all these skills.
Yeah.
So I think in the area of BI, yeah, you'll probably develop a lot of Claude skills to get the right data, with the right governed data set. So I think this is a very much a Claude concept of having a skill. All right. And again, the other point to note here is that humans again come in because these skills have to be maintained. Things change. So, you need this is not where everything is automatic. We will need humans to maintain those skills over time. I think that's the key message here too.
Yeah.
All right. I think, let's go quickly so we can have some Q&A.
Yep. Okay. So this is an example that we have, like an industrial service company. We are building their entire data infrastructure from the ERP system. We ingest the data into Microsoft Fabric platform. We do all the transformation, and at the end of that, we got a medallion architecture. And from the medallion architecture, in the fact and dimension table, we create like a semantic model with direct lake mode, and we build reports on top of that. Now, the one thing that we do for this one customers, we are adding metadata to their semantic model. We haven't built the AI agent yet. That's not a difficult exercise, but we're going to spend a lot of time with the customers, the end user, and not just the IT, like the business folks of our customer, and start to enhance the metadata, like I showed earlier. We go into the semantic model, table, columns, and add context and description and explanation to make it data AI ready for them. Okay. Next slide. So here we have like the three maturity stages. And I guess the last thing is the metadata investment compound across all three, right? In the first one, augment, we deploy agents on top of existing warehouse semantic model, immediate value, zero migration, okay? In the expand phase, we could start, broadening our data sources, enrich metadata, systematically, okay? And then in the very last, the data agent become the primary interface. So there'll be some change management for sure, right? We roll it out, and there going to be some question and trust building in the beginning, and so the data team will shift from writing SQL to creating metadata contract, a higher value strategic role. You don't need to boil the ocean. You need one governed data set and one business team. Okay. Next one. All right. So how to get started? Just pick one business question that your team get asked frequently that requires a data request. That's all you need. And then from that single data set, single model, we can build the semantic model, or can build a warehouse, put some table behind it, and we can deploy the agent. It's that simple, right? True democratization isn't just access to dashboard. It's any user asking question in their own words and trusting the answer. Data agents make this possible today.
Okay, I think it's time for
trust. Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we are now at the point, we have 10 minutes. Let's do some Q&A. I just kind of wanted to point out that we've been helping our customers build these data agents, build the right foundation. Happy to work with you guys. So next slide, please, and let's open up for a Q&A, I guess. So yeah, before we go to Q&A, just before, again, a quick reminder, we are offering a 2-hour free session. Pick our brains on your data strategy, existing platform. And if you have already built your first agent, or you want to build your first agent or enhance an agent, we are happy to work with you as a partner, and special discounts for that. So what are the questions, Sushil? Can we look at the Q&A? I see. Okay. Okay, so question here from, I think, is can I simply connect LLM to my database or warehouse and start asking questions? Chad, what is your answer?
Yes, you can. You will get the answer, but not the answer that you can be reliable and share that with your CFO or CEO. Okay, because different day will give you the different answer because of the technique it's used, right? With LLM, it basically using the language, finding similarity and trying to get the answer. It will never say, I don't know, or things like that. So no, can you simply connect? Now, if you connect it to a database, you got to enhance that with metadata. And I shared with you earlier how we can, with a tool like Microsoft Power BI, semantic model, we can enhance those models, right?
Right. And I just want to reiterate that, especially in the area of AI and BI, there is no magic. You cannot connect. We've talked to many customers, talked to a lot of experts, and Chad experience. The simple answer is no. You need to put in the hard work of building governance and the semantic model and adding metadata, all that.
Yeah.
That has to be done. What are some of the activities to enable data agent? So that's another
I
question.
mean, so let's say once you have the data, I mean, the system database, I think for you who are from IT, that is simple. It comes in and you can look at, and the next thing I would do is getting the system documentation from your software vendor that would explain, not a complete business term, but in ways that, a few level up from the technical standpoint, right? What these columns really mean, what those tables really mean. And you can start building like the 80%, we could automate 80%. In the end, you still have to ask the business. You go to, the specialist, the analyst within the business and asking them, how do they use the data? When they run the report, what do this number mean? How would you train your junior, analysts that coming in to help you support? What do they need to know, right? Those are the kind of thing that you need to capture and bake into the model. Okay.
Okay, there's one more question. If AI is
Yeah.
connected to data sources, how do we prevent it from accessing sensitive information? Chad, is this where perhaps Purview
Yes.
integration may come in? But go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. So right now the AI agent within Microsoft Fabric doesn't automatically know that certain columns of data is PII or sensitive or anything like that. However, if you use Microsoft Purview, right, where you define and you set policy for your data, the AI agent will get into that, and will answer your questions, smartly based on those restriction. Also about data access, if you have like access permission at the warehouse level or at the semantic level or at the workspace level, all of that is baked in. So it only give you the data that you personally have access to. It will not give you the data that you not have access to. Okay, so it's all baked in. It's very nice how Microsoft implements access permission and governance on top of their AI.
And just to add to that, if you're not in the Microsoft world, part of adding metadata is actually flagging information as sensitive. So you could also do it when you're adding a metadata as a flag. Hey, this is sensitive information. Okay, let's go to the next question. How do we get started on building our first data agent?
Okay, so how do we get started on building our first data agent? My first question is like, do you have a semantic model in place already? If you are, I'm probably iShop. If you have that already, I mean, I can walk you through, without, just like a working prototype with minimal I guess with minimal metadata, so you can kind of, experience it, right? But for it to be production ready, it's going to require some work on your side of getting, the business user input and things like that. But to get started building, it's very, very simple to do. You got a semantic model. I would go into that workspace and click on, create an agent. And once I create an agent, it will ask me the question, what data source do I need to give this agent? At that point, I can pick like a semantic model. I can select a specific table within of that semantic model for this AI, or I can pick all the tables, as part of that AI. And once I select all of that, I publish it. And once I publish that agent, uh, Fabric will create like an MCP server URL. And then you take that MCP URL and you go into your data agent and configure in your desktop. And that's all there is to it. I hope I answered that question. I mean, it sounds really simple in my head. I forgive me if it was not that simple when I explained it.
We can set up follow calls with the people who are asking these
Yeah.
questions. Very good questions. So definitely,
Yeah.
as I said, we are offering 2 hours of free consulting. So take us up on that. But we will follow up. So all right, we have a couple of more minutes. Let's see if there's any other question, or we'll give people maybe a minute here to see if they want to type in any other question. And I guess maybe I can ask a question on behalf of the audience. Chad, to build a simple data agent, are we talking 1 to 2 weeks? Or how long does it take?
I think I think 1 week is good enough. 1 week to show, and we get some business context in there just to showcase. But the more time that you have to give the business to get your input, and I think that would be, that would be the piece that really make a difference. And it's not fun for many of us, but that's the thing that really add value. And if you want adoption by your user, that's the best way. Get them involved, get them to give your data, and now you actually have a place for you to document all of that, and then the
All right,
AI will
Chad, we have
use
one
that.
more question. Let's address
Yeah,
this. Do you need to
yeah.
combine all data sources into a single repository, or can some resources be augmented real time on the fly? For example, SAP and CRM.
So I can combine, do you need to combine all data source into a single repository? So yes, it needs to be within the Microsoft Fabric environment, right? And the other
Or
one
any
is
other
you can
data
say,
platform, right? For that
yeah, I
matter.
mean, like, within Fabric, you can have, let's say, if you can get your, let's say, your Salesforce data or SAP data, into like a database, right? Let's say you host it on a data lake somewhere. Now within Fabric, you can do like a shortcut, like a mirror of data, right? And your model, your semantic model can mirror the data that does not exist, within Microsoft Fabric, but it makes sure it has all the permission and things like that, work out. But you can use a shortcut cut or mirror to build that data repository, and then you put your AI agent on top of that. So every time you ask questions, the fact that the data source will update the mirror database, and then the AI sitting on top of that model, it is kind of refresh. I don't know if that answered your questions, but that's the best.
We can go back, and I guess we have a minute. One last question, because this is really key for everything. Where does the human fit in all this? I heard the humans need to define the context, validate the data, but the human is still key, right, in all of this.
Yes.
We are not going away, right?
No, no, of course not. I mean now, our business user will be, more and more critical. I think, like, in terms of the amount of time will be in the past, IT would be, probably 80% of the work, but now probably, 60-40, what I would add.
Okay, there's one more question coming up, so let's take that in.
Okay.
I also encourage, so, if someone wants to
Okay, we
ask,
got a
speak,
question
right?
here, Sushil.
Yeah.
1 second. I'm guessing that agents can be limited to look only at endorsed semantic data models. Can you confirm?
Yes, correct. Now, at the time that you create the agent, you specify exactly, the semantic model that you want to be part of that agent, right? So your semantic model, you would go through the governance process and you endorse it. Yes, this semantic model is endorsed. It may be it will be sitting in your like a special restricted access in terms of workspace that only a few people can have access to, and then you build that data agent on
Okay,
top.
so
Yeah.
it's more explicit than dynamic, right?
It's very explicit.
Okay.
It is, yes.
Okay, great. Can bad metadata negatively impact agent
Yes.
performance? Oh,
Unfortunately, yes. Because if you have conflicting data within your instruction, that will give you a bad answer, right? So yes. So I mean, just like think of it as a new hire to your company that need to have proper instructions to do his or her job, right? So think of it that way, and you would document all these things for your new hire in the AI, and
but Chad, the question is
more,
not about instruction;
yeah.
it's more about the metadata. If it's bad metadata.
Yeah, I mean, like the same thing, like bad metadata. Let's say if you give inaccurate description of what that column means,
Right.
then it will, then the AI would mean
Absolutely.
differently. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I think we are 2 minutes over. We can go over. I don't think I see any questions coming up. I would like to thank everyone for their time. Thank you, Chad. And remember our offer, free advisory, will help you build an agent. Hopefully this was useful. Again, thank you for your time. We'll send you the recording and the webinar, I guess, the slide deck. So again, thanks a lot for your time. Goodbye.
Thank
Have a good
you.
day.
Bye-bye.